This episode of Q Point Podcast is pre-recorded, produced and sponsored by Karina Quirk, broker at Next Home Experience.
Different views.
I know your story.
From different Q's.
Incredible job.
He's David Quirk.
You brought it up.
And she's Karina Quirk.
Imagine.
This is
Q Point.
Thank you for joining us for part 2 with Republican gubernatorial candidate Robert Wessels. We've all heard about Gateway Community Services and the investigation there. As governor, how do you plan on approaching this alleged fraud throughout Maine?
That's a great question. And the obvious first answer is you have to care. And I feel like that's the first step. And that's a step that's missing right now in Augusta. Obviously, Gateway is pretty recent. But if you go back as far as the Chinese marijuana grows that we've known about for a very long time, we've had plenty of time to address that. We've had plenty of time to send people out and to wipe that out. Janet Mills does not care. Like, she doesn't want to do that. Again, when you go to Gateway or even our visits with the ride-along, the first step is to care. The first step is to say, there's something here. Maybe it's not fraud, but there's something here, and we need to care enough to dig in and figure out what that something is. And we need to have a state-level investigation. We need our attorney general to get involved, and we need law enforcement to get involved and figure out what's going on. So day one, I care. I see the potential there, and we need to figure out if that potential is actually fraud, and we need to address it. We need to address it with consistency. I don't care whether it puts Republicans behind bars or Democrats behind bars. I don't look at it party-wise. I don't look at it race-wise. I look at it and say, if these people are deemed to be fraudsters, they need to be held accountable as fraudsters. They are stealing your tax dollars and mine. And when you look at the state of Maine budget, it has gone up $4.4 billion in Janet Mills' term. Put that into perspective. We had 200 years that it took us to get to $7 billion. And then it's expected to hit $12 billion by the end of this legislative session. Where is that money? And the reality is, when you compare Paul LePage's last budget to Janet Mills' current budget, the vast majority of that money is in DHHS. So it's gone up by that much money. Now, we expanded Maine Care, so that's part of that. But how much of this stuff is what is bringing that budget up? We owe it to the Maine people to dig in and figure it out. So again, especially with the DHS part, you have subpar services that are being rendered and you're paying top dollar for it. So in the very least, if we didn't uncover fraud, we uncovered terrible services from terrible companies that shouldn't be contracted with the Maine state government. And these clients should be getting what they're getting, and they're not right now. So we need to address it. But we have to be willing to hold people accountable, no matter who that is. Ultimately, that paints a broader picture of we need to be a government of law and order. We are soft on crime right now, and you're seeing that with the increase of crime. Although crime doesn't necessarily, if you look at the numbers, I usually say numbers don't lie, except for when you change what those numbers represent. And if you change the definition of crime, then all of a sudden, oh, crime doesn't look as bad. Well, that's because you're not including this and you used to. We have to become a state of law and order again. And there have to be consequences for anybody who is breaking the law, whatever that law is, whether that's a huge fraud scam or something brutal on the street. We have to hold people accountable to that. And I did this all the time in business. You set those expectations, hold people to those expectations. They will rise to that occasion. They will hit those expectations. But if you lower the expectations, then they will fall to that expectation as well. And that's what we're seeing right now.
Well, you should also follow your own policies and procedures and maybe not just put forth no-bid contracts, right? Correct.
That's a great call out. We're seeing far more no-bid contracts than we ever saw. And where is the government accountability with the no-bid contracts? Some of the crazy ones that we heard of, there are a lot of things in the no-bid contracts that you look at, and normal everyday Mainers look and go, why? Why do we need this? Why didn't we go out to bid for this? The whole bid process is in place to save you and I tax dollars, and we need to be following our own policies.
What are your thoughts on cashless bail?
I think it's absolutely taking us in the wrong direction, and it goes along with our light on crime. I've talked to a couple police chiefs and sheriffs. Obviously, they still continue to bring in criminals, but they're let out right away. That can be demoralizing if you're sitting there and going, I'm seeing the drug problems. And also the legislature increased the amount of cocaine that you can have.
100 grams.
Yeah, I believe it was almost doubled. So you're tying the hands of law enforcement, and then you're blaming basically law enforcement when crime escalates. We continue to lower the bar for the criminals of Maine and make it easier and easier for criminals to do criminal actions and have no penalty. Let me ask you this and ask your listeners. If you were guaranteed to not get pulled over for speeding, would you go the speed limit? The vast majority? No, they probably don't go already. We know how fast you can go and probably not get caught. If you could go 100 on the turnpike or 120 on the turnpike, would you be going the speed limit? The reality is no. And we have these laws in place for a reason. And if you stop enforcing laws, people will not do what that law is requiring. And that's what we're seeing all over the state. So we have to enforce or remove the law. We have to enforce the laws that we have. And that's kind of parenting 101. When I tell the kids, you can't do this, and then I go and let them do it 20 times in a row, I might as well not said it. I should not have said it. And it goes with leadership. That's how I lead. If I'm saying something, this is the way it is, and you have to be consistent with that. And we're extremely inconsistent, and we've lowered the bars, and we've lowered the bars in our schools as well.
Speaking of education, our rating has gone down considerably. As governor, what would you do differently?
Yeah, it has gone down considerably. Back in the 90s, we were in the top of the nation, and now it depends on what you're measuring, but we're in the bottom 5 anyway. That is one of the biggest pieces of my platform. I'm looking at our schools, and again, I look at it as a purpose. And what is our purpose in education? To me, the purpose of education is to get our young people ready for life after school. Whether that's college, whether that's the trades, we need to get our young people ready for life. And right now, this is the last measurement in 2024, 26% of our young people in 4th grade can read better than a basic level. And so that's 74% that are at the basic level or worse. That's huge. And it's not much better at math. It's 69% are doing math at a basic level or worse. So if you are unable to read proficiently, unable to do math proficiently at 4th grade, it doesn't get dramatically better from there. I'm hiring these people as a businessman. And if you're graduating unable to read proficiently and unable to do math proficiently, what does your future look like? What kind of jobs are you going to be able to get? What kind of businesses are going to be able to hire you? And as a business person, you're looking and saying, hey, I need these top-notch people. Where are they? That's kind of the foundation on how I approach education. And the reason I sit there and say, okay, this is why we need to change. And a lot of the conversations I've had with people in politics is we need to tweak this. We need to tweak that. We're beyond tweaking in education. We need reform. We need to completely change our approach to education. We need to change our funding approach. I want to see school choice. As a parent, if our purpose is to get our young people ready for the real world, that shouldn't matter whether it's private school, whether it's homeschool. We've homeschooled our kids, all 3 of them, all the way through. And I will tell you, that was the best parenting decision we made. It wasn't political at the time. My wife is just a teacher, and that's her heart. And it's been amazing watching them. 2 have graduated, and our daughter's a junior right now. Ultimately, it shouldn't matter whether it's private school, charter school, homeschool, public school. If our purpose is to get them ready, that's what we need to be doing. And we shouldn't care. We shouldn't be pushing people towards public schools. And that's what we're doing right now. So we need to do school choice. I will also say that the biggest concern I and many others have with school choice is there's always strings attached to government money. So I'm not in favor of the ESAs or voucher programs that you see out there a lot, because it may be fine today, but what's that look like in 20 years when all of a sudden the state says, you know what, you're getting government money. You can't teach this. You can't teach that subject. You can't teach it in this way. My way of getting around that or doing it differently is let's do a tax credit. So the government's not giving you money, but you're just not paying this money in taxes. So there's no strings attached. It's just you're not paying that money in taxes that you would normally be paying because you're paying it in education. I would like to see us go that direction. The other piece is we need to get Augusta out of our schools. And right now, there are so many laws, there are so many regulations in how we operate our schools and what we do. I don't know if you know this, but if we were in school together and David, you go and you start threatening me, the teachers can't hold you back. They can't restrain you. You start chasing me down the hallway, they can't restrain you. They can't stop you. You start pummeling me, they can't restrain you. They can't stop you. Now, they can stand next to you and say, David, please stop. David, stop. Don't do this. You can't do this. It's not until I'm in imminent and severe danger that they can actually restrain you in what you're doing. This is a state law. This is crazy. No wonder our schools, our teachers, I look at the teachers and I don't like the word victims, but the reality is they're the ones that are being hurt by this. They can't control their classrooms nearly as effectively because their hands are tied in so many different ways. So we have to get back to the fundamentals and the basics of education. We need to get back to the literacy, the math, the science, and focus on moving our students ahead. We need to get rid of DEI. We need to get rid of social emotional learning and CRT. The whole bad alphabet, it needs to be thrown out. And we need to be focused on the actual fundamentals and academics of learning. Mississippi is a great example. It's always fun because a lot of people go, it's about the money. It's about the money. Maine's a poor state. Well, Mississippi is right there with us in economics, and they were sick and tired of it and decided they'd had enough, and they changed their literacy, and they've gone from, I think, somewhere around 49 in the nation to in the top 10 just in recent years. So it proves that it can be done when it's focused on and when it's important to you. And they just made some very simple, very common sense, logical decisions at the state level. Let's put that authority, put that responsibility back on our school districts, not Augusta. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I go to our school board often, especially during budget time, because in many cities, many towns, the school budget is at least 50% of your property taxes. It started back when I was a selectman. People would come to me and talk to me about taxes. And yes, it's legit. And by the way, do you know your school? At that point, it was 66% or something like that in the town of Paris. So I go to the school board now and I'm like, hey, this budget, it's crazy. It's out of whack. Look at this administration. The cost per pupil continues to go up while the results go down. And the number of students we have in our schools continues to fall, but the cost continues to go up and the amount of administration continues to go up and they continue to hire more. And the answer I always, 100% of the time I get from my school board, Augusta makes us do this. Augusta makes us do that. And they have a list of regulations and laws that Augusta makes. This requires more people to do this report. This requires more people to do the paperwork. Let's get Augusta out of there. You shouldn't micromanage from Augusta. And let's allow our school board, our superintendents to be in charge of their district. Sink or swim, they're in charge. And then the taxpayers can hold them accountable to their results. And that tune will change. Once they have that responsibility and they don't have finger pointing, when you go to Augusta, by the way, they're pointing the finger back at the district. So let's end the finger pointing game. It's like when we were kids, go talk to mom, go talk to dad. Let's end that and let's put the responsibility where it belongs on the districts to make the decisions for their students and be held accountable by the taxpayers.
You are listening to Q Point Podcast. I'm Karina Quirk, co-hosting with my husband, David Quirk, and we are having a conversation with Republican gubernatorial candidate Robert Wessels. If you don't win majority this November in the legislature, but let's say you win as governor, how are you going to make all of these changes?
I think we all know that whatever Republican governor wins or whatever party, if the majority is not in the legislature, they're going to have a tough row to hoe. The reality is that, number one, I will have a veto pen. So the number of bad laws coming out of Augusta will dramatically go down because they don't have a majority to be able to override a veto at this point. And I'll be honest, I do expect that the Republicans will win the House. We were so close, and I think all of this craziness that's going on in Augusta is only going to continue to push us. We were within 60-something votes of winning the majority the last time. The Senate is going to be harder, but I do believe with all my heart that we'll be able to win the House. And that's one part of why my campaign has been campaigning in Lewiston 3 times to be able to get Janet Bowden in. She's wonderful, and the difference between her and her opponent is dramatic, but I'll be able to veto. And as selectmen, even though it's not partisan, we didn't necessarily know what party we were. There were some people who thought very, very differently than I did around the selectmen table. And I was very successful in communicating with them, working with them on projects and listening to them. I believe that all of us, the legislature included, wants to be heard and wants to be listened to. And if we can have an intelligent conversation and talk through things, I may not agree, but at least you're knowing that I care enough to listen, to make that eye contact, to ask you those questions that tells you I'm legitimately thinking about your dumb idea and I might be convinced. Or I might just say, no, that was a dumb idea. But I believe the vast majority of people really respect that and really like that. And it does allow me to work with everybody. I won't be able to get everything done that I want to get done unless there is a Republican House and a Republican Senate. But we'll be able to get a lot done, and we'll be able to veto what we don't need if that's where it's at.
So I know a little bit about your story, but why don't you tell our listeners?
I'm not a career politician. I was a selectman for 4 years. I'm a businessman, been in retail. So I stock shelves overnight at Walmart. And I really wholeheartedly, I did it just for the health insurance. My wife and I found out we were going to be having our firstborn. And I said, oh, we don't have health insurance and this is expensive. So I got a job at Walmart overnight stocking shelves and fell in love with retail and just said, I think I'm going to stay here, and decided to, over time, over a short while, climb into management and really learned management through the School of Hard Knocks as well as through official training through the company. And fairly quickly, within 7 years or so, I was running a store in the absence of the store manager and decided to jump over to US Cellular. And I ran a couple stores there. And so I've been a store manager. I got my MBA and just really fell in love with business, fell in love with problem solving and dealing with the public. I look and say anybody who's been in retail for any extended period of time, they get so many life skills. They can do almost anything because of that ability to interact successfully with the public. That's where I've spent the last 20 plus years, and I kind of dabble in other things. I taught Dave Ramsey for the last 18 years in my community and absolutely love helping people with their personal finances and listening to their situation and talking through and telling them the hard truth. It's that service mentality, service mindset. And ultimately, I think a lot of people I talk to had their eyes open during COVID and have looked at our government. And I'm a very big limited government guy. We just continue to expand the powers of our government and overreach of our government. And it was shortly after COVID, I just looked and said, this is crazy. Our government just continues to do things. So I had been having that thought all the way from 2020 to 2022. And the straw that broke the camel's back for me was our school district, SAD 17, was trying to pass a policy that said they can sexually transition your child without telling you as a parent. And hundreds of us as parents said, absolutely not on our watch. This is not going to happen. And we spoke up. And to their credit, they decided to not pass that policy. They tabled it indefinitely. I'm like, I don't know what that is, but it kind of sounds like we won, but it's still there. The town of Paris, we're a feisty bunch, and we have a recall ordinance, and we recalled our 2 school board members that had voted in favor of this and replaced them with people. One of those happened to be our select board appointed my wife. So she's on the school board, and she's also on the policy committee, so we'll know if that comes back up. But I looked at her, and at that moment, that's when I said, we fix this, and getting good people on school boards in town select boards or city councils is critical. But the problem's in Augusta, and we need somebody in Augusta who's willing to step up, who's willing to make the hard decisions and do the hard things. And that's me. And if I have the skills and the talent and the ability and the willingness, then I need to do it. I need to go for it. And that started the journey. I do have 3 kids. We talked a little bit about them. I say kids, but 17, 19, and 21. So young adults living in the house, and they're absolutely amazing. And every step of the way with parenting, I'm like, oh, this is the best stage. Oh, this is the best stage. I love this stage. And now it's the same. I look at my wife, and my daughter's a junior in high school, and she's had a part-time job all summer for a couple summers now. And both of my sons are kind of like just dabbling and figuring out what they're going to be doing with life and starting careers. And it's just such a blessing to watch them be successful human beings and contribute to society. That's what I want for everybody else. We need to give them that chance to be able to get out on their own, to afford a house, to be able to afford life in Maine without leaving. And they are the reason I'm running.
Do they go out on the campaign trail with you?
They do. My middle child is Davy. And if you go to any campaign event, I gave him the day off today. But if you go to any campaign event, he's almost always there. He absolutely loves it. And he's been a huge help. He's my media guy. So if you see a video of me on social media, there's a very good chance that he's the one who put that together and did the editing and yelled at me about doing a bad job and I have to smile more or whatever. He's the one behind that magic. And he's been very heavily involved. Josh and Lana are very supportive and they help us out and they go to events when they want to. But they're working on a lot of other things and involved in a bunch of different things. Davey has said, I'm going to be with you, sink or swim, all the way to the end. And he's done that amazingly. So it's been fun.
And how about your wife, Christy?
Yes, it is Christy, and we have been married since 2001. In June, it will be 25 years. Absolutely pure bliss, no fights, no problem. No, just kidding. It's marriage, right? But it's been amazing. She grew up in South Paris, and she's one of 7 siblings, and several of them and parents and grandparents all live on our road. And so you literally could run a mile up the road and like, oh, I know this house, this house, this house. So family is just absolutely a huge part of our life and wouldn't have it any other way.
So what differentiates you from all of the other hundreds of candidates?
It feels like hundreds, doesn't it?
It does.
I just kept watching them enter the race. And I would say there's a lot that differentiates me from the Democrats and some of the independents. But focusing more on the Republicans, there are currently, I believe, 10 of us, and we're very similar on our energy policy. And I think what you're seeing with so many is so many people are seeing the need, and they're seeing the obvious things that have to change and saying, I have the skill set to be able to do that. And there are some really, really good guys that are running for governor right now on the Republican side. And I would be happy to have most of them on my cabinet. I think they would bring something really good to the table. I think what differentiates me is probably single-handedly my perspective on limited government. I'm not going in to grow our government. I'm going in to limit the overreach. And we don't need to create another law. Let's take away these 2 or 3 laws and regulations because they're strangling our economy. Again, I will sign bills into law, but the reality is I hope to sign a lot more repeals. I hope we can eliminate or reduce the amount of legislation, the amount of regulation that we have, because at this point, and you see it with business, you just get these rules and you get these things in place and they drag you down and they cause you to grow slower. And that's what we're seeing in our government. Our government is holding back our economy. It's holding back our people and our families, and they're hurting because of it. So that's my focus as opposed to growing it.
What specifically do you have a plan on day one to focus on?
Maine is in desperate need of a DOGE, a Department of Government Efficiency. And I'll take it up with Elon Musk later. But the reality is I came up with the DOGE idea. I told my wife about it. I'm like, listen, we need a small group of people who are constitutionally minded and business minded people who are willing and able to find the regulations, find the red tape, find the fraud, and create efficiencies in the way our government operates. And I'm going to create that group. And then Elon's like, hey, DOGE. I'm like, that's it. You just took it. You took my really good idea. I'm fine. He gave it a cool name. But Maine needs a Department of Government Efficiency. We need a group that is willing to find all of that stuff. I am 100% convinced there is fraud. We need to find it. We need to address it. We know that there's a ton of overregulation. We need to find out which ones are beneficial, which regulations are good, and get rid of the ones that are not. Again, talking about that certificate of need, that's just one example, but there's hundreds. They're driving up our housing prices, they're driving up our electricity prices, and they're hurting our businesses and our families. So we need, on day one, we'll establish that DOGE and get them working to save Maine taxpayers. My goal is year one, as soon as whoever gets governor, that immediately they're starting to work on a budget. Almost immediately, they put that budget together. Year one, that budget needs to be cut by $2 billion. And I know $2 billion sounds like a lot, but the reality is it's gone up by 4.4. So you're still leaving 2.4 for inflation. You can cut $2 billion from that budget and then give that back to the people in the form of tax savings. And then we have DOGE who comes in during that first year and is able to find things that we can do to help lower costs and to help deregulate and cut costs for Maine families and Maine businesses. Again, we're not taking that money and we're not putting it into other things. We're giving that back to the people and allowing you as businesses or you as consumers to spend that money where you see fit, which will help your business, which will help your employees. And we're putting it back into the economy. And it's been proven over and over again, when you do tax cuts, your revenue grows as a state. And yet we continue to not do that. We do the opposite, and we're seeing the opposite happen. Ultimately, that's kind of the direction. That's day one for me, cutting that budget, giving that back to the people in tax savings, and then creating a DOGE that's going to continue that process over the next couple of years. DOGE should not be a permanent thing. I hate bureaucracy, but I think there's a time and a place for it, and now is that.
Before we let you go, I need to ask you a question from a listener who wants to make sure that I ask every political candidate about ICE. What is your position on ICE?
we can't be a country without borders. I actually went to BIW the other week where there was a protest. I was there supporting the high-paying jobs that Pete Hegseth was looking at possibly bringing to Maine and saying, we need these jobs. But there was a big counter-protest, or I don't know were we the counter or were we I don't know. But there were a bunch of people who disagreed with me. I was having some good conversations with some of them, and I'm like, we as a country need borders. And she's like, yes, I agree. We need somebody to defend those borders. And we have laws in place. And she's like, I agree. I go, ICE is that entity that does that for us. So long story short, I absolutely support ICE. And my brother-in-law is an immigrant, and he followed the process. He's now a citizen and happily votes. He may even vote for me. We'll see. That was a joke, by the way. I hope he does. But I'm 100% for legal immigration. We have a process. If that process should change, if we look and say, hey, you know what, this process isn't working, then let's change the process. But we can't just ignore the process, and we can't just allow people to come in. Now that all of these people have come across illegally, we need to find them and we need to send them back to where they came from, and they can come back legally. But we need to address the problem. And part of the beauty of immigration is you can control that flow, and you can control how many people are coming in and whether they're bringing benefits to society or not. That hasn't happened with the illegal immigration problem that we've seen in the last couple of years. It is impacting our housing prices. It is impacting our healthcare costs. It is impacting our taxes. There's very little in our state that having a mass amount of illegal immigrants, and many of them we're paying for with taxpayer dollars, whether that's housing or whatever that is, we're helping them out. We need to be addressing that.
So what's the best way for people to get involved in your campaign?
Thank you for asking that. If you haven't been able to tell, this is a absolutely true grassroots campaign. Starting 2.5 years ago, no name recognition, no money, and just have been going along and growing that over the last 2.5 years. So we absolutely need donations. I'm not taking any taxpayer money for this campaign. Obviously, I can't rail on the budget and then go and take taxpayer money for my personal campaign. So anybody who is really on board with the campaign, wants to help out, I would absolutely love that. That has been the single hardest part of this campaign, is raising funds. I hate asking for money, and I think people hate hearing people ask for money, especially when it talks about politics. It's all of the worst things combined. So yes, if anybody's on board with the campaign, would absolutely love some campaign donations, as well as we need volunteers. We need boots on the ground, people who are willing to put up signs, people who are willing to door knock. The vast majority of what we've been doing and how we've been growing is by going door knocking. We knocked on 2,000 doors or more in January and hundreds again more in February. So door knocking is big. The more people we can have knocking on doors all around the state, the better that will be. It really resonates with people as you show up at the door and talk about it. And they're kind of like, oh, it's like the old fashioned ways. And people absolutely love it. And there's certainly those people who don't want to have that conversation. Just give them the literature and let them read about you. We need donors. We need volunteers. And you can sign up to do any of that at my website, voterobertwessels.com. And find us on social media. We're all over the place on Facebook, on X, Instagram, and now even TikTok. Absolutely would love to interact with your listeners and hear from them.
Give us that website again.
VoteRobertWessels.com. Wessels is W-E-S as in Sam, S as in Sam, E-L-S as in Sam.
Republican gubernatorial candidate Robert Wessels, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I've absolutely enjoyed it.
Thank you. You've been listening to Q Point.
Follow us at qpointpodcast.com or on your favorite streaming app.
This is where you can get the news from the people who make the news.
Make sure to join us next time.
We hope you tune in.
Q Point Podcast invites guests and candidates from all parties to join the conversation. The views, information, opinions, and comments expressed during this program do not necessarily represent those of the host, Q Point Podcast, associates, affiliates, and CQRE LLC.
Thanks for being a part of the conversation. The most important voices aren't always the loudest ones. They're the voices of everyday people, raising families, running businesses, serving their towns. That's who we want to hear from. Share your ideas with us online, and let's make sure those voices are never left out. Find us on Facebook or on X or at qpointpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Catch every episode at qpointpodcast.com or wherever you stream. Tune in and tell your friends.